It's almost my birthday, so it felt like high time to share my favorite metal albums from my birth year, 1986.
How can you listen to this stuff?
And we're gonna kick things off with Kreator with Pleasure to Kill. As someone who tends to prefer the more extreme end of thrash metal, that gnarly early era of German thrash is probably my favorite corner. It's among my favorite thrash metal albums and just a blast to scream along to, and in addition to the heaviness, that also has to do with the choices regarding placement of syllables for those utterly iconic staccato enunciations. It takes all the aggression from the debut, steps up the songwriting, and really cements the band's identity within the genre, and also bringing this element of chaos that adds to a sort of frantic aesthetic, like you're on a battlefield with bullets flying around you. Personal favorites: Ripping Corpse, Carry On, and Command of the Blade. Then we have Whiplash with Power and Pain. Rager of a thrash album that I'm so glad was recommended to me in the Discord when I was working on my various thrash rankings. This was one I actually missed at the time, but I'm glad to finally include it here. There are so many thrash albums I could have included from this year, from Nuclear Assault to Destruction, but if you ask me, this one beats those out big time as a start to finish listen. Just non-stop speed and fury with plenty of earworm hooks along the way, and as great as the guitar work is, they never slouch on the vocals or drumming either. Plenty of fun bass parts too on tracks like Red Bomb. Then we have King Diamond with Fatal Portrait. Shockingly, this may end up being the first time I mention one of this Heavy Metal King's albums in a video, and goddamn is it overdue. This is the debut full-length after 2 albums working with Merciful Fate, and it is a masterwork in atmosphere. I have to admit that some of the high screams make me giggle a bit like in the final third of The Candle, but this is killer songwriting that still holds up. From that opening organ to the reverb-heavy production and chugging riffs to, of course, the falsetto vocals, this is some really impressive foundational stuff. It's clear to me why this man had such an impact, from the music to the OG corpse paint, and I can hear how bands like Cradle of Filth owe a lot to this record. Then we have Voivod with Rrröööaaarrr. What I consider to be the true beginning of Voivod, with them starting to step up the progressive elements alongside the very Motorhead meets Venom sounding speed metal influences. It's not quite Killing Technology yet, but they have such a strange but instantly recognizable guitar sound with this very sort of wonky, grinding, breaking machinery vibe. Totally unique in a time where a lot of thrash albums were kind of converging in sound, so much so that I've often referred to them as the Primus of thrash metal, which is funny considering that Larry Lalonde was doing thrash and death at this time, with Possessed dropping an album this very year. Then we have Megadeth with Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? Taking a bit of a slower approach here with more dynamic and sometimes progressive arrangements than the albums that precede it, like Wake Up, which is a great opener. And there are songs I absolutely love on here, like Good Morning, Black Friday, and of course the infectious title track with one of the greatest bass hooks of all time. Tons of fun riffs and memorable songwriting, and while I've never considered Dave to be an objectively good vocalist, there's still something about the pure, unpolished rebellion in his voice that just works. There's definitely some filler in comparison to my personal favorite, Rust in Peace, but this is still in my top 3 from the band. Yo, we have plenty more albums to go, but as always, if you're enjoying the video, hit the like button, and also comment below what are your favorite albums from 1986 or from your own birth year. Then we have Dark Angel with Darkness Descends.
Someone who hates, it's easy now, I'm in. Breaks in the bed, the one who was raised, the human remnants of all.
Now, if you ask me, this album shreds just as hard as Slayer and Kreator, despite getting not even close to the same level of respect. The title track just rips into you with insane riffs, unhinged vocals, and Gene Hoglan killing it on the drums. Same goes to The Burning of Sodom and Hunger of the Dead. If anything, it only gets more vicious as we move into Merciless Death. Love the soaring leads, breaking up the relentless palm mutes of Death is Certain, Life is Not. Just a violent, ripping, tearing beast of an album that's entirely teeth and claws, and I love how the choices in production only further amplify its dark, ugly vibe. On a similar note, we have Sepultura with Morbid Visions. In spite of the out-of-tune guitars and broken English lyrics, I love this album. In fact, I'd argue that the imperfections only add to its charm. And its unique cavernous atmosphere really makes it stand out, too. I can also hear how, along with the likes of Celtic Frost, Bathory, and Venom, this was a starting point for some of the earliest black metal bands. Hell, there's even a track called Mayhem. A fantastic debut from a couple Brazilian dudes who were just clearly inspired by the more satanic vibes of Slayer at this point. People rave about the albums that followed, but this one continues to hold a special place for me, and I love that we were both in our infancy at this point. Then we have Sodom with Obsessed by Cruelty. Another particularly raw and gritty album that was an inspiration to early black metal. Euronymous even named his record label after the track Death Like Silence. Similar again to Sepultura in some ways, this is a very dark and cavernous sounding album with a particularly wicked aesthetic. It's messy, it's ugly, it's gnarly, so again, it's right up my alley. I love me some black and thrash, and this is one of the OGs. Again, there are so many options I could have gone with, but once more, leave it to the Germans to really capture my taste straight from the womb. Then, of course, we have to include Slayer with Rain and Blood. An instant and undying classic. I am convinced that without this album, like 75% of my favorite bands wouldn't even exist. So many classics on here: Angel of Death, Necrophobic, Criminally Insane, Jesus Saves, Postmortem, and of course Raining Blood with one of the most memorable guitar hooks of all time. Just a wicked, evil-sounding record that doesn't fuck around at just under 30 minutes with not a second wasted. I hate to seem basic with some of the big four entries on this list, but these albums are all big for a reason. Before I get to my final pick, I just want to shout out, again, I know that there are plenty of other albums that I could have picked and that plenty of other people might have, like Motorhead, Cro-Mags, Candlemass, and of course, Iron Maiden with Somewhere in Time, which is probably one of my most famous unpopular opinions on the entire channel. I think that aside from a song or two, this album is boring and overrated. Overall, though, this album is pretty dull for me. I'm gonna put it at D tier.
All you are, my dear, is a contrarian.
So yeah, do with that what you will. Unsubscribe if you have to, but hey, opinions are opinions. But of course, my top pick that I had to include from 1986, my birth year, is Metallica with Master of Puppets. Was there any question as to whether this would be on the list? Another timeless album with a banger of an opener in Battery, as if to say, hey, we haven't lost our edge, but then they follow that up with the nearly 9-minute title track showcasing an impressive step up in both technical performances and, again, progressive songwriting. And that trend continues with The Thing That Should Not Be, and even closing out side A with a ballad, this time in Sanitarium. Where Ride the Lightning is just a perfect but mostly straightforward thrash album, this is their crowning achievement as musicians, and again, I'm proud to share my birth year with it. Y'all, obviously, a lot of these picks were thrash metal, so check out this playlist for more thrash metal related videos, or check out this video for whatever YouTube thinks that you should check out. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.